first place I stopped by, but it was just like a cool geological structure. So I didn't do any filming or anything. I just stopped by, spent the night nearby, and left in the morning just as a tourist destination for myself. But I was reading more about it, and I actually thought that the rocks were so cool I made them my phone background and everything. But I was reading more about it, and I figured there actually is one story that could count it as a cryptid location for creepy Kansas. So I figured that it would actually be worth coming out and visiting again and actually filming, especially since I was driving by again. It's only a 30-minute detour. Look at these rock formations. That's not even the rock formations we're going to. So the story that I've heard, and I can't substantiate this, it's just what I've... Oh, deer. Antelope. Deer? Antelope? I'm not sure. Yeah, those are deer. What I've read on the internet is that farmers in this area, the area is super rich in fossils. This all used to be part of the Western Interior Seaway that at one point stretched from the Gulf of Mexico up into what is now Canada. It was a warm, shallow sea that existed during the Jurassic and Cretaceous periods. Woo! That was my brakes locking up a little bit. This thing does not have anti-lock brakes. So in the Jurassic and Cretaceous periods, this was all a shallow sea. So there have been many fossils pulled up of plesiosaurs and mosasaurs and whatnot, including some found basically at Monument Rocks. And when we get there, you'll be able to see there's like, it's chalk from the ocean floor. So there's still shells and stuff embedded in the sides of the rocks. So you can see how they would pull up plesiosaurs and mosasaurs and big giant fish and stuff. And hopefully I'll be able to go to the museum and actually show off some of those skeletons, because I really want to see them. They have a giant plesiosaur skeleton, or it might be a mosasaur, I don't remember. A giant aquatic reptile skeleton at the nearby fossil museum. And then the one that's up in Oakley has some other fossils I want to check out. But the cryptid story is that ranchers and farmers working in this area have claimed to see mosasaurs and plesiosaurs floating across the sky as if this was still seabed and they were still swimming overhead. Which I think is a cool story. I haven't been able to find specific accounts with specific names or anything, but just the idea of seeing phantom ghostly plesiosaurs from 70 million years ago swimming over your head while you're out just doing ranch things is definitely a story. So I'm going to keep my eyes out. You can see in that rock there, you can kind of see the chalk formation with the strata and whatnot. This drive is going to get a little bit hairy here. I'm going to put down my phone and drive. The name Monument Rocks has become the primary name. That's it up ahead. You can see it. That's where we're going. The name Monument Rocks has become the primary name for the landmark over the years. But it's also been called various other names, like Pyramid Rocks is the other one. So I just passed, if you'll remember in my video on Stoll, the Creepy Kansas Part 1, I mentioned that Kansas is just absolutely dotted with teeny tiny family cemeteries. I actually just passed a cemetery that was called Pyramid View Cemetery up on that hill over there because of the view of what's called the chalk pyramids. And you see this little dirt road just runs right between them. We're on an active cattle ranch. Last time I was here, I actually had to stop and make my way through a bunch of cows. But graciously, the man who owns this land, yeah, you can see those are all cows down there. And there's one in the road even, way up there. I don't know if you can see that on camera, but there's a cow crossing the road up there. But the man that owns this land, I can't remember his name. He is a real estate investor who rents out the land for grazing, and he graciously leaves the monument open to the public as long as you follow some basic rules. So if you do decide to come out here, you probably want a vehicle with four-wheel drive or at least all-wheel drive and some ground clearance. There are some spots on this road that do get very muddy. There are some spots that get a little bit sketchy, as you saw last time I was filming. Something with anti-lock brakes would be nice, but not necessary because this doesn't have ABS. The route that I took in this time was from the Fossil Museum, which is not open yet, and it's a lot less sketchy than the route that I took last time, but this is where I just saw that cow crossing. There's cows right there in that water hole. So take your time, be careful. There's cows at the monument too, it looks like. We might be sharing the monument with some cows this morning. And make sure to get gasoline and water, because, I mean, we're 20 miles from the nearest gas station here. They also request that you stay on the designated trails around the monuments and in the immediate site. It's on the National Register of Historic Places, so they request that you stay on the designated site and not wander off into the cattle fields. It would be lovely to be able to go hiking out here, but it's all active pastures. I mean, there's a bull right there, so if you haven't grown up around cows, we are definitely sharing the site with some cows today. Look at that. I think there's a cattle guard right before. Oh, and there's a donkey. Oh. It's a baby donkey. There's a cattle guard right before the actual monument, but yeah, this is an active ranch very clearly. Boy, they're pretty animals, huh? Morning. And here we are. I didn't prepare notes here, so I'm just gonna kind of wing it. Is that a fossil right there? Let's see. Sorry, my morning wake-up alarm went off and cut the video. Hi, cows. So this is Monument Rocks. This is one set of rocks, and then the other set is over there, a short walk away. As I was saying before my phone cut me off, there are actually fossils you can see in the concretions. You're not supposed to take them, that one's fallen off, but the entire thing, this was all ocean sediment, and each inch of ocean sediment represents 700 years of history. So the monument is 50 feet tall, 700 years per inch. That gives you a idea of the scale that we're talking here. There's a persistent rumor that megalodon teeth been found here. There's megalodon teeth that have been found near here, but not actually here. So that's one of the ranch trucks, I think. I'm gonna go pet this baby cow now. I'll be right back. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna let you guys see the baby cow. Hi, baby cow. Oh, nope, he does not want to be petted. You can see they get out occasionally. They're all tracked through here. Hi, cows. No, they don't trust me enough to let me pet them. That's a shame. Not sure where that bull went. It was a ways away. Nowadays, there's no megalodons or anything through here. Oh, the other thing is megalodon is too recent. You wouldn't find megalodon teeth here because the structure, all this sediment, was laid down between 120 million and 70 million years old. It is actually almost exactly aligned with the Cretaceous period. Megalodon didn't live in the Cretaceous period. Megalodon lived, if I remember correctly, 30 million to about 5 million years ago. You might find other shark teeth here, but not megalodon teeth. So, a little bit more about the history. Everything here would have been chalk like this, 50, 60 feet high. And then over time, as the ocean receded, it all eroded. Except for here, you can see the bits of black on top there. That is, I forget what kind of rock it is, but basically it's a quote-unquote glue rock is what they call it. It laid down as a sort of glue, and it prevented this from eroding where that rock was. It didn't erode underneath it. So while the rest of Kansas eroded down 50, 60 feet, Monument Rocks did not. And so you get the little bit of black glue rock on the top, and it protected all the chalk underneath it. Nowadays, there's a ton of barn owls here. When I was here last night, it was later in the evening, and I was seeing baby barn owls everywhere. I also tried driving my Jeep through here like a dummy and got stuck. So I'm seeing if you can still see my tire tracks. I bet you those are my tire tracks a month later. So I tried driving through here like a dummy and got stuck. So in the pre-Columbian history, this site was supposedly considered sacred by the Apache. So it's also worth noting that, you know, we are literally standing on sacred ground, so don't go driving your Jeep through it like I did. You can see a bunch of swallow nests up here. They look long abandoned. I heard from my research that swallows inhabited this area until pretty recently, and the barn owls moved in and the swallows moved out sometime around 2006, 2007. But there's still some abandoned swallow nests. So yeah, the Apache inhabited this site until relatively recently. And then during the Oregon Trail, this site, which was then known as Pyramid Rock, was a landmark along the Oregon Trail because you could see it for miles and miles and miles. So there was a trading post that was set up nearby called Scott Trading Post. And then that trading post kept getting attacked during the Indian Wars following the Civil War. So that's when they put up Fort Scott. And now the Scott Trading Post is long gone, but Fort Scott still stands. This is about 15 miles north of Fort Scott, Kansas. Cool little bit of history. And then the area was bypassed by the actual highways. The Oregon Trail no longer ran through. That means that this dirt road that I just drove in on is actually the Oregon Trail, by the way. Like, the actual Oregon Trail ran right through here, which is pretty cool. This dirt road going off in the distance here that I just drove down is the Oregon Trail. So then the route was bypassed by the U.S. highways going in, and the spot kind of was like a local treasure. Like, local Kansans knew about it, but nobody else did. Look, there, right there is a fossil. That's a fossil right there. Just laying on the ground. Look, here's another. That's what's so cool about this spot. Leave that for the next person to see. Until in, I believe, the 1970s, they set up a visitor center nearby. There's an old church 5 miles that way that we'll go visit next if we can. And they set up a visitor center in the church with some of the fossils that had been found in the area, including that plesiosaur that I was talking about, as well as the world's largest ever bony fish. And the spot started to gain more popularity since then. It's a pretty popular tourist destination now. This is the kind of side rock. That's the main rock over there. We'll go over there next. This is going to end up being a video all on its own, just about monument rocks. Like, here's another fossil buried in the dirt. That's the thing about this chalk, is it is chock full of fossils. Dad joke for the day. It's kind of crazy to think this is in Kansas, huh? It really is kind of a hidden gem. Okay, I'm going to put you down, and I'm going to hop in the Jeep, and I'm going to drive over to the main set of rocks over there. I could walk it, but then I'd have to walk back to my Jeep. I unfortunately can't spend a ton of time here today. So I will be right back. Hi, Future Hazel checking in real fast. I'm editing this video, and I spotted a mistake that I made, so I was just going to pop in and correct myself real fast. I mentioned that the Niobrara Chalk Pyramid, or the Monument Rocks, as it's also called, grew at a rate of 700 years per inch. And then I questioned my math a little bit on that because the monuments are 60 feet tall, and that didn't sound right to me. The reason for the discrepancy is that the monuments, as they're exposed over the surface of the earth, are about 60 feet tall, but they actually extend for about 300 feet underground. So when you take that 360 feet and divide it by 7, it does, or by 700, it does in fact end up being about an inch per year. So that math does check out if you consider the massive amount of pyramid growth there is underneath the ground. So I'm here now at sort of the main part of the rocks. That's where I just was. I believe that's called the castle, and this is the pyramid. The arch is the most iconic part. I'm a little bit late to see the sunrise through it. But last time I was here in time to actually watch the sunrise to the arch, and it was very, very cool. I took a lot of pictures. I might throw some of those into the video, but it's same formation. This formation you can see all the way out there. There's a chimney and more chalk bluffs all the way there and all the way there. This formation extends for something like 50 miles in every direction from here. But this is by far the most striking remnant of it. This here is a piece of the face that is unfortunately getting eroded from people walking across it. Used to stand right here. And it looks like, from the side, it looked like a person's head. So since this was the pyramid, they called it the Sphinx. And it unfortunately toppled off, I think, in the 1980s. And it's getting heavily eroded into the ground now. But it is cool seeing exactly where that used to be. Unfortunately, the rocks are eroding, so they won't be here for forever. So if you do come here, don't climb on the rocks, don't pick at them, don't do stuff like that, because that only speeds up the erosion. We want this to last for as many generations as we can, because sort of by nature of, well, it's nature, sites like this are temporary, and we're just lucky to have been here to have witnessed it in its heyday. This is the front of the arch. In the morning sun. It's about 8 in the morning right now. Those swallow nests don't look abandoned. So I think the swallows might have just moved over here after they got kicked out of there by the owls. Sort of interesting. There's a kiosk over here with some information. Let's go over and check that out. Gross, somebody's Invisalign is laying in the dirt. I usually pick up litter when I'm in places like this, but I'm not picking up somebody's Invisalign. In order to preserve this fact for future generations, observe the following rules: no climbing, fossil hunting, littering, camping, barbecue, or bonfires. So there's some photos of how it appeared in the 1890s. As well as this famous photo that shows Old Chief Smokey, the Sphinx, which I guess was not where I just showed. That was a different face. Not sure where that would have been then. Looking around. I thought that was Old Chief Smokey over there. I must have been wrong. There's several photographs of school groups visiting. The crack as it appears in the 1890s, which would be what, on the other side of this, I think, down here. I would love to invest in a drone to be able to take on trips like this. I think if I'm doing videos exploring interesting locations like this, being able to get a drone up in the air and get some aerial shots would be awesome. As is, I'm just filming with my phone, which is like a 5-year-old Galaxy phone. But you know what? Not everybody has 4-wheel drive and time to road trip across Kansas to some of these points, so I figured I should film some of them. There's the valley you can walk through. More swallow nests. It really is crazy, these strata. Every single inch is 700 years. Here's another chunk that has unfortunately fallen off. Maybe that was the Sphinx down there. I have to go check that out on my way out. I'm gonna call the fossil shop in a second and see if they're open, see if we can go over there. And if not, we can still visit the Natural History Museum, the Fick Museum in Oakley, which I tried to visit last night and got there literally 2 minutes after it closed. Huh, there's some carvings in the rock here. I didn't notice these last time I was here. On the northeast or northwest side. Let's see if I can get that with my camera here. It looks like a whole bunch of names carved in English. I may have 1885, Robbins, Rewick, Daniels. That's kind of cool. I hadn't noticed that before. Obviously that's vandalism, but given enough time, vandalism becomes history, right? I'm gonna go check out that stack there, see if that's the so-called Sphinx, and then I'm gonna call the Fossil Museum and see if I can get in today. Time jump. Okay, I'm not quite sure whether or not this is actually the Sphinx, but I still want to come check it out. We are that far away from the main rock, not far at all. And it looks like this used to be a road, but they've staked it off to let it recover. Otherwise, I would have driven my Jeep down here. Just gotta watch for snakes. Believe it or not, Kansas very much is rattlesnake country. I know you think rattlesnakes, you think Texas, but funny story there. I once spent an entire summer in Texas, didn't see a single snake, drove up to Colorado, and literally right after I crossed the Colorado state line out in New Mexico, we pulled over a scenic outlook. I stepped off over the guardrail and off the trail to go take a leak, and almost stepped on a rattlesnake. Luckily, they're usually courteous enough to warn you. I'm also obviously a pretty avid hiker, so this may not be as easy to get to for people with mobility issues. Even me a year ago, I might not have been able to do this, but so this outcropping here is sort of separate from the rest of the rock, but not really. I don't know if this was the Sphinx or not. I've seen pictures of the Sphinx, and this doesn't look like the Sphinx, so I guess this was just its own thing. That's part of the fun of these adventures, though, is sometimes there's not much documentation on this stuff. Looks like a dung beetle. Sometimes there's not much documentation on this stuff, and you kind of have to piece it together as you go. All this I'm walking on is fossils, though. That's crazy. I don't think this was the Sphinx, but it is part of the same rocky outcropping. And it did obviously collapse. Unfortunately, this is the future fate that awaits that monument. Don't know if it'll be 100 years from now or 1,000,000 years from now, but in the grand scheme of things, you know, when you're talking geological timescales, 1,000,000 years is not very long. I mean, if each inch is 700 years, then what's the math on how many inches 1,000,000 years is on this deposit? I'm not good at math, but we're around 700 to 1,000. That can't be right. Maybe each inch is 7,000 years, because if we round each inch to 1,000, then we're talking 1,000 inches. Maybe I was mistaken. Each inch represents 7,000 years or something. I think I'm off by a couple orders of magnitude. Anyways, so I called the fossil gallery, and they did not pick up. I need to drive by it anyways on my way out to Oakley. So we'll see if they're open. If not, Fossil Gallery in Oakley opens at 9. So we can go to that one instead. I'd really like to visit the local one. I don't know if you saw that. Remember, I almost stepped on, or I didn't almost step on a rattlesnake, but I saw a rattlesnake at Lake Inman when I was looking for Sinkhole Sam, but I just saw a baby horny toad over there. He was about that long. Super cute. Okay. Let's do another time jump. Well, unfortunately, I made it to the Keystone Gallery, and once again, the building is still closed. So I won't be able to go check it out, unfortunately. You can see, though, through there, that second set of rocks, that's Castle Rock. It's something Badlands State Park. I can't think of what it's called right now, but it's very similar to where we were, which was up here, which is the Monument Rocks, which unfortunately is not part of a state park. It's privately owned. But I mean, the owner does an okay job of keeping it open, so it's alright, I guess. I was really hoping to get to see the Keystone Gallery. I've seen some pictures online. I might throw some pictures into this video. You can go look them up yourself if I don't. They've got this sweet old Evolution Rules. I think it's a Suburban. It's a Suburban, but it's a panel van Suburban, so it doesn't have back doors. It says copper lights happen on the sides. That's funny. Love me a good paleontology pun. We've got this line here, so I'm not going to go further than this driveway, I guess, but I would have liked to see this museum. Unfortunately, they're closed. The Fick Museum should be opening pretty soon, though, so I'm going to drive up to Oakley, get some gas, because I'm dangerously low in gas, and visit the Fick Museum, and I will see y'all then. Headed into Oakley now to get some gas and some breakfast before I hit up the Fick Fossil Museum. But I wanted to point out, you see these Badlands stretches here, and there's a whole bunch of oil infrastructure out here. Most of the geology of what we know, of the geology of western Kansas, eastern Colorado, and New Mexico, we know because of the oil industry. And it's kind of sad that the whole reason we can tell you things like, oh, the entire region is a mixture of karst, limestone, and chalk from the inner seaway that used to exist here during the Cretaceous period, is because of oil drilling. But you know what? Whatever, fun science, you know. I would love it to be altruistic betterment of mankind and, you know, learning for learning's sake. But if we're learning so that we know where to drill for oil, you know what? So be it. So frickin' be it. Here's the scenic Smoky Hill River. Not to be confused with the Flint Hills on the other side of the state or the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee. Not much of a river. So I'm like 3 blocks from the Fossil Museum at the Casey's, and I've had a small problem. The Jeep has decided that it doesn't like oil in the engine and wants to put it on the ground instead. So I'm having to do a small repair real fast. And then I'm gonna hit the Fossil Museum. But then, I don't know if I'm gonna make it to Kansas City tonight. I might end up camping again. Awesome. Also, the part that I need, there's not one in the entire town. There's a Napa Auto Parts in Colby that might have one. So, if I'm lucky, it's the oil pressure gauge popped off and pumped all my oil out. So if I'm lucky, I can limp to Colby and find one in Colby. But this trip just got a lot harder. Okay, the Jeep has suffered some pretty serious issues. My oil pressure sensor ejected from the side of the engine block and it's not holding oil right now. But I have limped it back to the Fick Museum. And so while I wait to hear back from AAA, I'm going to check out the Fick Museum. Because I've spent all day in this town now. I'm going to do what I came here to do. Last night I pulled up right as they were closing. Today I should be able to go visit. So without further ado, the Fick Fossil Museum. This is Sabathinus, the largest bony fish to ever live. This is an actual fossil. Look at that guy. He's like 15 feet long.
I didn't even think that, but he got him born in here and told me this is what he's gonna do. And yes, he deserves
This is where all the cool fossils are. These weren't found at Monument Rock, but they were all found in the area. So imagine seeing this swimming in the sky above you. They even have a drawing of Monument Rock there. A painting, I mean. Imagine seeing this swimming in the sky above you. That's what these ranchers claim to have seen. Some old Charles Knight style paintings. Here's a shark made of shark teeth. All sorts of shells and sea stars. A sardine jaw found north of Scott City. That would have been right by Monument Rock. Same with the fish and limestone. I have a Nidia like this, where it's just one, but I've never seen one like this. Or it's a whole school thing. That's very cool. Little trilobite bro.
Until 8 o'clock. He said everybody was standing out front and they couldn't get in until 8. I'm like, I thought the doors opened at 7:40. Because this morning when we got there, we were a little.
There's a Caracodon. Oh, these are from Venice, Florida. I was gonna say.
I'm sure.
Reptile teeth. The Gomphotheres. These guys are so weird. Shovel-faced elephants. Teeth of a giant pig. Oreodont skull. That's so cool. It's an entire fossilized skull
I slept really hard and I thought, oh my God, it's time.
of an ancient pig. That's very cool. A three-toed horse. There's a rhinoceros jaw from a North American rhino found in Nebraska.
They've got to start going to bed earlier.
Unknown bone.
Yeah, it was about 5:15 because he heard something. But then when I went, and then I had to go back downstairs to wake him up at 7.
There's another Zapathricus. I'm not sure how to say it.
Get up, little boy. And then he came upstairs and he goes,
What amazing creatures they would have been. Charles Sternberg preparing the mosasaur skull. There's not the chalk bluffs we just visited, but that's the New Jerusalem ones, which are a few miles west. There's the Monument Rock Pyramids. A mastodon jaw that was found nearby. Collected near the pyramids, and that's, I'm pretty sure that guy there. So yes, he was collected at the pyramids, basically, where we just were. Massive, massive mastodon tusk. A Tylosaurus, a type of giant mosasaur. Honestly, imagine, like, just for scale, there's my hand. The shadow of my hand on it. Imagine seeing that flying above you, as if it was just swimming through the sea. That mammoth tooth is mammoth. This guy is just so big. That's so cool. Let's back out through there, okay. I'm mostly here for this, but I'm gonna check out everything else here.
Because he texted him and he couldn't get hold of him. Yeah, and he's like, he's not answering. Do you think you could, come get me?
That's cool.
I don't know how I got home. I don't know if Maddie brought him home.
Looks like it's made out of crinoid. That's fun.